Thanking Isa, thank you Ashley, and thank you Edith for the invitation and also for the space, for this casa, and yeah, for opening up and offering this space and this safe space to open up a conversation, which I always think is very valuable for in order to enable exchange and facilitate exchange to happen. So thank you so much. Today I'm going to be talking with some amazing speakers, artists that I admire so much, and also curator Ana, artist Isabella Russo Siqueira, Maria Conejo, and Devin Osorio. My name is Ambar Quijano. I'm an art advisor and a curator. I was born in Mexico City. I lived here the first 10 years of my life. I've lived abroad, and when I was living in London, I started advising and curating exhibitions, starting with an online exhibition program featuring the works of emerging artists from different places around the world. And at the moment, I'm also really excited to share that we currently have an open just before Art Week, our new curatorial and exhibition space, really close to here, actually, in Escandon. The name of the space is Casa Astronoma, and we currently have on an exhibition titled Nature Holds a Mirror, where I was really interested in exploring a range of bodies, female, queer, male, organic, biological, and animalistic bodies in relationship to imaginary, physical, and psychological landscapes. And for this exhibition, it was really important for me, and kind of like a breakthrough moment and a big inspiration was going back to ecofeminist texts and how accessible and direct and fast they were able to see and point out the direct correlationship between issues revolving around marginalization and oppression, along with environmental emergencies and environmental issues, and how all of these problems and themes are in fact correlated and not segregated problems. What kind of like made a click for me was also thinking about the body and how it has become part of the political throughout history, but also most recently when it comes to choice over the body, almost like the body becomes a kind of property entering the political landscape in the same way that the earth is treated as property and as territory. So for me, that was a very evident and strong link. And I'm really happy to be and excited, looking forward to having the talk with these speakers today to touch on some of these themes around the body, around identity, around nature, around a place. And also within the country, like within, for several of us, home country and the country where all of us are based and working. Mexico and Mexico City, as you might be able to see, has so much to offer culturally, in terms of history, creatively, in terms of talent, but it also has a very strong patriarchal heritage that I think is very important to to mention and to contextualize for this, to use as a context also for this talk. And before we jump in with some questions I have for all of you, I would like to ask Anna if you could please share with us a little bit about your background and your curatorial practice, please.
Thank you, Ambar, and thank you, everybody, also for Clique for having us here. I think my career is a little bit accidental and also a little bit good luck. My mom is an art historian. We come from Mexico City. And I didn't want to study art history. I was inclined to receive people in the context of Mexico in the 80s and seeing what the potential as a touristic place was. I thought I had to be useful, and I embarked in studying hospitality management. And I was not very happy because I was not surrounded by very artsy and creative people, which were always the people I liked to hang out with. And it was quite traumatic when you are 18 and 25, your identity is completely lost. I had my artsy friends, but in the university I had I didn't want what I thought would be like very square people, you know? And fresas. So I was a bit lost, and then I met my partner, my romantic partner of life, Max, a German architect, and he invited me to follow him to London. And there I said, I have a second opportunity, and I decided to follow my calling and study art, design and environment at St. Martin's. And from then on, everything kind of started falling into place. First because my first job was at a great gallery, Superpowers. And the reason that I was employed there was because of my hospitality training. So it took me maybe 7 or more years to understand that my practice and art is hospitality is a crucial aspect. And from then on, when I came to accept that this was actually a very good accident for me, my curatorial practice has started to have a strong footing in that awareness. No? And hospitality, how I understand it, is also very linked to curatorial practice. It has to do with care, to receiving and connecting and really welcoming people. No? So this is an example of that kind of care. And also establishing dialogue with people from far, with different ideas. That is hospitality, no? And then, curation also, so the etymological root word is to curare, no? To curate, to cure. And then to cure means maybe there was something amiss or something that needs to be taken, something with the health. Restoration for me also has to do with that, of restoring. When you go to a restaurant, you restore your body, no? So this is where I find the link between the body as home, or home as body even. And I feel very lucky, no, to have had that mistake in the beginning. But now I see that it's actually a very good way to start, because it's giving me opportunity to also explore different career paths as an art worker. I've worked in commercial galleries, where of course there's a big component of traveling and event planning, and again, receptions and cocktails and parties. Then on I moved to development at Museo Tamayo, which also had to do with fundraising and connecting, and a lot of hospitality in that aspect. And at Tamayo, I started infiltrating into curating, which I like. I'm not an academic person. I like to connect with people, And the first projects that I did was to invite younger artists from abroad to do a project at the museum's shop. Also a way of disrupting the canon. No? So if you're exhibiting in a museum, you have to have a long academic trajectory. And whereas the shop, you could break all of the rules, no? And also in terms of the preciousness of the artworks. So we started out with MOL, a collective from Colombia. We're doing a lot of wearable art, fashion, and these non-hegemonic ways of making and consuming and sharing art, which for me was a big eye-opener. And the second project we had at Tamayo was with Emilio Bianchik, an artist from Uruguay and Argentina, whose project was also a real eye-opener for me. He proposed to have a manicure salon at the museum's shop, where he employed trans women to apply the manicure. And while he was, explaining to how to give a space to people who have a very limited opportunities to grow, to be visualized, and having them participate in this activity was really nurturing. That's also another word that comes from hospitality, when art really nurtures. And from then on, I think my career path has looked to keep doing these collaborations, to open these opportunities to visualize. And with Emilio, we had another collaboration last year at Salon Acne, where he worked with the concept of the ant communities. And again, him opening the space for other species to participate in art, and what we also did was infest the house with ants, but there were rice grains, each painted with a little ant, and they were scattered and pasted all around the house, so also invisible, but monumental in a way, and we integrated also children to participate in an activity. So I think these acts of inclusion, of hospitality, of welcoming, I cherish and champion a lot in my career, and that's a little bit about my work.
Beautiful. And going back to the last project you were mentioning, it also really strikes me how you were saying very small but all full of agency as well. And I remember talking to you, it was yesterday, and you were sharing a little bit about this project. And I think you were also sharing about setting up a manicure and pedicure salon in the museum shop. Can you share a little bit more about that, and also kind of like the idea of having things farther away from the head? And
Sure. So this is Emilio Bianchik's practice, an artist that I've collaborated with a few times, and the art piece that I first saw of him is a video of somebody, just a hand, trying to apply nail varnish on a roller coaster. It's funny, of course, it's hilarious, but also says a lot, I think, about the nature of the queer community, of trying to maintain, to do something, to do work, even if it's just embellishment, in a very precarious and it perhaps violent, but also perhaps fun environment, and it's such a simple gesture that sometimes captures you forever. And when he said, well, I'm an artist that works with hands, but he also painted with his feet, and I was like, well, I love that you have these extremities, coming to the ideas around the body. Of course, artists are expected to work with hands and the mind, no? But Emilio, in this idea of also changing the way that we approach value and art making, and he says, well, I liked my feet to, my art making to be as separated from my head as possible. What happens when you give that opportunity, no? So I think that's very, very moving as well, and also his work with insects and animals. So it's a good point for also talking about these subjects around his work.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that we're opening also the conversation and the questions with that. Thank you, Anna. Maria, can you please introduce yourself and tell a little bit more about your practice with us?
Yes. Hi. I'm very happy to be here in this amazing garden among these amazing people. My name is Maria Conejo. I'm Mexican. I am bisexual. I was born 35 years ago in Cuautla, Morelos. Cuautla is a small city 2 hours away from here. I studied design at Fine Arts School, and my creative practice spreads over many areas like drawing, painting, muralism, ceramics, book designing, art direction, illustration, and most recently, tattoos. My work revolves around the body and its representation. It began as an intimate drawing practice that helped me understand the relationship with my own body. So for that mean, I created this character without this female body, without a head, that now has eyes on her deeds. And at the beginning, she started a quest to find her head, but now she has a narrative of her own. And well, she has accompanied me through many chapters of my life. So 6 years ago, I started the journey of my life by co-creating this sex education platform called Pussypedia.net, that it's online, it's free, it's bilingual, it's inclusive of anatomical expressions, of anatomical configurations, gender expressions, and disabilities. We have won with this project the Mexican Biennial of Design in 2019. We won a Webby Award on 2020 for being the best educational website on the internet. And in 2021, Pussypedia, a comprehensive guide, was published in New York, and now it has been translated to many languages. Surprisingly, the first language was Ukrainian before the war. Now it has been translated to Italian, French, Spanish in Spain, but hopefully it will be ready in Latin America this year. And this project signifies a big research that I started. I went through the history of images that had been created regarding sexuality and the body, and all of the things that I discovered have deeply influenced my work.
Beautiful, Maria. Thank you so much. Bella, Isabella, could you please share a little bit more about who you are, your practice, your background?
Thank you so much for everyone here. My name is Isabella Russo Siqueira. I was born and raised in Cancun, Mexico. My mom Brazilian, my dad Mexican American. I lived 8 years of my life in the US, so a lot of cultures mixed. I find myself constantly playing with found materials, so like a sea buoy that I found in the beach after a hurricane and intervening it to like throwing wine and coffee in a fabric and starting a painting. So I like my process is a lot about losing myself in the creation and like provoking accidents and finding the beauty and the intentionality in these accidents, which is like part of my therapy, you know, as I create the art. And nature is a good example of that, and it's my biggest inspiration because of my context. and I go from like the most basic abstraction, which is a line, organic line with movement, to a more like intricate and delicate a woman's body, which is my perspective of the world, no, my story, and yeah, I'm just excited to talk a little bit more about like the context of why I was inspired to talk about these topics. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, dear. Devin, same thing.
My turn.
Yeah, beautiful, your turn.
Uh-huh. Bueno, I'm honored to be here with all of you. I'm a little nervous, but excited.
Yes.
And yeah, so my name's Devin Osorio. I am from New York City, Washington Heights to be specific. That's also a little Dominican Republic. And kind of in a similar fashion, I kind of stumbled my way through and made a lot of mistakes and realized I fucked up in many places and found my way here. So then, yeah, I was never the artistic one or the creative one or the smart one when I was younger. But then I worked really hard and I was just never wanting to be home. So then I had a lot of interest in fashion, and in high school was interested in a lot in fashion, interested a bit in galleries. I worked construction when I was 12, kind of just doing everything available to me.
Yeah.
And slowly trying to narrow down what I loved most, which was really just like tech. I love animals and I love interesting exotic things. I'm a very curious person. So then from fashion, I realized that wasn't my world. So then I kind of transitioned to textile design, which I really loved. So it allowed me to have all the fun and I guess creativity that I wanted while still in this world that I was familiar with. So then throughout school, I kind of just went deeper and deeper into a fine art practice, but still using the body as my armature. Until about 2.5 years ago, I started painting, thanks to my really good friend, Tiffany Fonseca, who was like, please stop messing around and just figure out your life. And yeah, so I've been painting ever since and loving it. So I guess like the crux of my work, I guess in a nutshell, is to document the Dominican American experience, specifically in Washington Heights, because that's the only thing that I know, which is my life. I'm not smart, you know. And I was really inspired by the Chicano culture in Los Angeles, and thinking about the hybridity of cultures that happens through migration and immigration. So then, I guess the vehicle of wanting to just understand and visualize that led to then unearthing myself and figuring out who the fuck I was and what was I scared of, why do I cry when I'm drunk, what do I laugh at, you know, who am I as a person, and who's everyone else around me and what do they represent me. So yeah, so the work is like always evolving for that reason, because nothing's been like targeted down, but in the end the idea is to represent me and everyone that grew up like me in Washington Heights.
Yeah, it's so into identity and to introspection as well. You're a very reflective person, and I would love to know, how do you think your Dominican Republican heritage bleeds into your works, and perhaps some of those moments when you catch yourself like, oh, this comes from here, and these memories are more than memories in Dominican Republic, and memories of perhaps your family and things that perhaps in other homes in New York you wouldn't experience. You know?
Right. What was interesting is that growing up in Washington Heights, everyone was just like me. So then I didn't meet anyone that wasn't Dominican until I was like 12 or 13.
Wow.
And even being in New York, being that young, I never took the train. I had no reason to. So even the idea of downtown was 42nd Street, I think. So then I went to college in Savannah, Georgia, and that was my first time being, after, of course, like, you know, being queer in Washington Heights was bullshit. So then I was dying to get out as fast as possible. And then once I finally did, I was like, oh no, I really miss it. So then it was a moment of having to think about, what is it that I missed? Who am I actually when I'm in a foreign space? And like, how can I bring home and comfort with me if I am the vessel that's always around in my narrative? So yes, I think Dominicanness is just always there, because I breathe Dominican, I spit Dominican, you know.
Beautiful. I think the other day we were talking about the religious iconography that sometimes humorously and other times more meditatively pops out in your work. And I'm really curious to know if you consider that rooted more when it comes to your Dominican Republican heritage, more rooted in that. And also, could you also talk a little bit more about that iconography as and your work as a reliquary for culture, for different identities, for diversity.
Right, yeah. So in Dominican Republic, Catholicism, thanks to colonialism, is the main practice. But then there's also a division of like voodoo that's called Los Misterios.
Like in Cuba, similar.
Exactly. So then, each island kind of has its own variation, but they're all very similar. So it might just mean that a saint will be called differently, or you might use lilies in the altar instead of using sunflowers. And though it is interesting, so then I grew up where Misterio was always in my life, but I just didn't know what it was. And I would go to like palo ceremonies, and I just never questioned it. But then on Sundays, I had to go to church and give my tithings and then sneak out, do my thing. So I think that like the mixing of the two has always been ingrained in my life, and it's the fantasy of my existence. And like Latinos, we like love fantasy, we love mystery, and we like to package bad news with a beautiful bow of cuteness, like the genre bachata, which I think about a lot.
A 4 sentences long to deliver. No?
Exactly, yeah. Make it taste nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like, I don't know, I'm really interested in like magical realism and kind of pulling out what that means and how that looks like for me. So then me as a character uses Catholicism and all these things as also a character. It's like, well, I decorate myself in these ways.
Yes.
So does Jesus Christ. Where do they meet? What's happening? And then thinking about my work as reliquaries is interesting because that's, I think, where the therapy is happening. Because I love to compartmentalize and avoid my issues. And when I do that, I can't. And it's like, right, run all you want, be as like whatever as you want to be, but then still the emotions are here and the trauma is present and the joy is present. And that's when I try to connect the fantasy me and the real me together. Yeah.
Yeah, the fantasy becomes this vehicle to kind of like embrace memories and trauma. Yeah. And I also would love to know how was the process of deciding to move to Mexico. And you mentioned briefly also your upbringing and how it sucked, in some ways, and I wonder in relationship to acceptance, how has been your experience of acceptance in Mexico versus the US, and perhaps like the pros and the cons of each, Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I moved. Okay. So then my mom passed away in 2017, and I was deeply depressed. That's what happened. And then also at that point, I was working, I think, for like a nonprofit. I tried fashion and it disappointed me. I was working in textile design, and when the thing you love pays your rent, but you're still broke, it becomes really unhappy. So then I was just like completely lost. And I had a bunch of questions in my mind that I couldn't find connections to. So I came to visit for the first time in 2019, and I felt like all the answers I was looking for were coming to me organically. I remember it was like the first day we went to like a thrift store, and this one like image idea I had instantly came up. I was like, what the heck? So like, just to go deeper, like I just think I needed the air and the water and the whatever here to realign me at that point. And then the beauty was that in the process of that time, because at that point I still like wanting to work in fashion, be that girl.
Okay.
But then it was a 2.5-year process to move here, and in that time frame was when I started painting and kind of giving myself the ability, like granting myself the access to think of myself as someone beyond this career that I went to school for, and instead as someone that's a practitioner of process and developing different things. So then, I guess to your question of acceptance, I guess with all that work happening, I think growing up as a queer person, and especially as a femme-presenting, gender non-conforming person, you have to face a bunch of issues that you might not want to, but you need to. And you have to answer questions at every moment in regards to one, self-accept, but then also to be safe in the world around you. So all that work was done when I got here, and I was like, yes, being here was beautiful and necessary for my growth, and I wanted to give back and do as much as possible. But in regards to my queerness, it was like, when that part of me, you're gonna take it, it's gonna take it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna become straight
Yeah.
because I took a flight. You see, and that's what's happening. It's kind of just merged its way into everything. You know, when you like hide something and the bag rips and it spills everywhere. That kind of love just spilled into everything. And you know, I'm still a lost bitch, but a loving one.
And in terms of safety, and I guess like also when I was thinking of acceptance, I was also like really considering safety and basic safety as walking in the street, you know. Do you feel the same? Like it's the same?
Yeah. Well, I think being unconventional, whatever that means, in a space that's conventional, whatever that means, doing that within home and family that you were brought up with, and you have these perceptions of like mom and dad and brother and sister and whatever should treat me this way, trauma becomes really aggressive. And expectations not being met become really hurtful. But you know, I'm meeting someone that I met yesterday and they treat me badly. It's like, well, bye. Like, I'll block you. And my life continues. So I think walking through the streets of New York, I've been able to find my enclaves and I feel safe within my spaces. And then being outside of New York, it just means that I am my own enclave and I find my own safety. You know, I'm not gonna be stupid, but also like just assuring.
No, that's beautiful because it kind of like we look back again to the idea of casa and home, and not only within yourself, but perhaps certain people and who is part of your casa, who is not going to be part of your casa. Yeah.
Because the house is physical, but that means an idea.
It's an idea, exactly.
Maybe it just means you have to have like, I don't know, your candle before you work, and you brush your teeth to the left or something, but that's casa también.
Beautiful. Thank you, Devin. My dear Isabella, I know that nature is a very central theme to your work. And I would love if you could expand a little bit more on the role it plays on what you do.
So, my art practice started being very figurative and a lot of the female body, my body in different scenarios, flowing in nature, and was sort of this idea of like, it's nature and why is it such a big thing, you know, growing up in Mexico, in Cancun, which at the time was a small town, in a religious community, Catholic community and all of this, the idea of your body and the woman being like the cause of the sin and, you know, having to like protect yourself and not provoke danger to your life and all these ideas. I obviously like questioned my role and my body. So I was like very ashamed at one point. I would like cover myself, even like my bikinis were like bigger than, you know, they should to cover more and stuff like that. But very curious because my mom is from Brazil, and women in Brazil definitely have more of a freedom and like expressions, how they dance, how they dress, all of these things. So when I went, I was 18 and I went traveling by myself in Brazil, and it was my first trip alone, and I was like, okay, no one can tell me anything. Like I can dress however I want, I can do whatever I want. Like no one knows me, so I felt super free. And I like bought new clothes and you know, like just did all these things that I sort of felt a bit ashamed to do in my hometown. And it was like a big realization that like, why, you know, why do I live with these ideas? It's a natural thing, you know, it's my body, it's natural, like we're creators of we're creators of life, so like where is the disconnection, you know, from it? So it started being very figurative, but then I started like I tried to go to more of an abstraction of that idea of nature and like just the human's body and how like we're all connected in a way. So um, yeah, it's not now my art is not like the most figurative, and you don't necessarily see a body as soon as you look at the painting, but there's definitely like the suggestions of it, you know. So that's sort of like the connection in the nature and the art.
It's more of a deconstruction, no, of that, of those ideas, of those images, of those references, and of those forms to create these environments that kind of like embody all of these things that you're interested in. And I think my next question is, how do you think abstraction, or what do you think abstraction has helped you to explore versus when you were kind of like thinking a bit more figuratively?
Well, as an artist, you're human, and like my practice was like my exploration of my ideas. So I started trusting a bit more in like my intuition and in the finding like what I explained a bit earlier about like finding the intentionality in the accidents and all these things. So I know what I want to express. I don't know how it's gonna come out necessarily all the time, but just the exploring and allowing myself to explore in the abstract world, which was very like frightening for me at the time. I don't know, has allowed me to, how do I say it, like to present this idea in a different way, like a more dissolved way. I don't know how.
Beautiful, yeah. In a kind of like, I don't know. For me, they're very fragile. There's like a fragility to them. There's a subtlety also to them that I also connect a lot to your interest and what I consider one of your casas or one of your homes, the archetype of the wild woman. And I would love to know, how did you kind of like begin doing research about this? You know, research can be in many forms, and how does this relate to your work, this archetype?
Well, the archetype of the wild woman is just like the accepting that we are intuitive, we are creative, we are creators of life, all these different things that that have helped me like trust myself a bit more. And when I saw this archetype, I was like, oh, you know, this is like the idea of the woman dancing naked around the fire, and we're the witches, you know. So like this idea of like, oh, this is what I want, like what I am, and it's okay, you know, like there's no guilt in, you know. And obviously like our cycles, our menstrual cycles are connected to the cycles of the moon, and you know, like all these different cycles of the earth. So like the more we try to connect with the earth and with nature and with ourselves, the more we'll like be in touch with, you know, our home, which is our bodies. And so yeah, sort of,
Beautifully said, dear. Thank you so much. I also know that for you, Maria, the body is very like a protagonist in your work, a character full of agency. So could you please expand and tell us a bit more of what role does the body play in your work?
Yes. Um, well, yes, as you said, the body is the main character of my narrative, but also it's the main character of its own narrative. I created this headless body in an attempt to just see what my body had to say, like without all the noise from the outside. Like I think that, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about my context in order to explain all of this. But I think that I'm a Mexican. I was born in a family of women. Like, I don't know if this is like very Latino or is all over the world, but there is this famous figure of the absent father. So I was daughter to a single mother, and I spent a lot of time by myself when I was a child, like trying to figure it out the world on my own. So I had this existential crisis when I was 5 years old, in which I realized of how insignificant the size of my body was in comparison to the size of the universe, and that gave me so much anxiety. But at the end, I found out that that thing that was very insignificant is the only thing that I have, the only thing that I will ever get to know, the only vehicle that I have to get through this human experience. So I think that I became hypersensitive and aware of my own body when I was 5 years old. So I started this journey of amazement, of discovery, of being impressed of how far I could go on my bicycle. I went to karate classes and I was the only girl, but I was there kicking other boys' asses, no? And it was great, it was fun, it was amazing, but then at some point things just started to go to shit. O sea, like I was sexually harassed when I was 9 years old, and I think that that breaks something very important to me and with the relationship that I have with my own body. I had a Catholic education that was based on guilt and shame, and I was pulled out of classes to change uniforms because nuns at my school were like, your body is a temptation, like you are distracting everyone and we need to treat you different. And I went through many experiences when I was like 16, listening to older people telling me I was a pervert just because I was trying to figure it out my sexuality. So I don't know, like I started generating this character, this headless body, and it surprised me how expressive it was, and it helped me to connect all of these dots because it's that journey didn't stop like with my Catholic education. I think that my whole life, and I mean I talk about my life, but I think this is like what everyone go through. Like we are exposed to music, TV, books, whatever, and every seems that everything has an opinion on our bodies, like how we need to behave, how we have to have sex, how sex should be, how sexuality should be, how I relate to other people, and then other things get in the mix. It's not just sexuality, but it's also gender. It's about race. It's about being brown or not being related. O sea, it was unrelatable to see all these people on TV or everywhere when I was growing up, and you could only see white people, skinny people everywhere. And I don't know, like now with this character, I've been exploring all of these issues. And also after Pussypedia, I realized that there was a lot of information that I didn't know that I didn't know. O sea, I have come to this journey and I feel great about my body, and I'm here talking about the relationship with it, but then the relationship with our own bodies depends on how much we know about them. So if we don't know about them, if we don't know that we are allowed to feel pleasure, that, o sea, that pleasure is something very important in our lives, so we cannot be fully ourselves. We cannot take our place in the world because we lack confidence, because it's scary, because we don't know our true and whole potential. So that character has helped me come through all of these realizations.
Beautiful, Maria. Thank you so much. This question is a bit of a follow-up to you and to Isabella. And I would like to know, in terms of your art practices, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, Mexico is a country with so many things to offer. with a really strong patriarchal history heritage reflected on the increasing numbers of domestic violence and feminicides per day. So I would like to know how has this heritage you think has influenced your practices and your vision as artists, I think. Also.
Well, I tell this story a lot, but when I started doing the naked bodies, I started in my room, painting in my room, and a family member one day comes in and they see this naked body, and they're like, "What? What are you doing? Like it's you naked. Like, are you gonna share it? Like, why are you drawing yourself naked? Like, you're exposing yourself. Um, like people are gonna like." And I was like, why are you? This is my space. Like it's my room. I'm creating for myself. Like I really didn't ask for an opinion or like why are you here imposing these ideas on something that it's mine. It's my creation. And they were like, I just want to protect you. Like the reality is that the world is like not so great, and like we have to protect ourselves. So always this idea of like protect yourself. No, don't go out at this time. Don't wear this shirt. No, don't all these things because you're putting yourself in danger. So it definitely like it did wake up an insecurity, in my practice, but I don't know, my practice has been the healing process of accepting and understanding that this is my opinion, this is my perspective, and I have the right to express it the way I want to. So yeah, that's a very like I'm very close to my family, but like someone so close to you that you believe has these ideas, and they go and break on your bubble of like this is what I want to be and this is what I want to express. So it was like yeah, it's just the reality of what we've been taught.
Yeah, and I think what I would like to add is that within the context of Mexico and its patriarchal heritage, family plays a huge role. And sometimes families stay silent, and women within families stay silent for decades, just to keep the construct, to keep the illusion of this casa, and or the casa, the only casa they ever knew. So I think in that sense, your example is, yeah, thank you for sharing that, Bella. Um,
Well, I think patriarchy. I don't know, like when we created Pussypedia, when we launched it in New York in 2021, we didn't receive as much press because all of these topics are never important. It's not a priority that we know about pussies when there is a war happening. No, that's what it seems. So that's one thing that we needed to fight. I mean, I think that it surprises me that here in Mexico, the acceptance of Pussypedia has been different. I think because it's necessary, because it's urgent. Like we are all like we need that. So it's clear. No, there are a lot of spaces that are opening, pues the conversation. But I think that that is something that has been playing a little bit against my practice. Like I don't get as much attention with these topics. Like my art sometimes it's like, oh, feminist art, so we don't want to talk about it. Like I feel like some of that too.
instantly labeled as something, you shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, reducing things like just because a woman made it or just because the topic is about, I don't know, something related to the body, then suddenly it's put in this other category. Also, I think as a brown woman, I face different challenges also.
With pussy also,
With pussies and like my whole presence, in the art scene. I don't think, also I think that I've been producing art for the past 10 years when the art world here in Mexico was a different thing. It wasn't open for brown people. And in this process, also of discovering my sexuality, of opening the discussions for sexuality and pussies, I'm going through this journey of discovering what being Mexican means to me, in feeling proud of my skin. I don't know if I can relate to all of these topics of Mexicanity, like pre-Hispanic heritage, because we don't know any about it. Like, we've been conquered and we are a little bit clueless on what we see. So I think it opens the possibility. With all of this research, I just came to the conclusion, and I came to this conclusion reading this historian called John Kelly, and she wrote this essay called "Did Women Have a Renaissance?" In which she talked about how history. When I realized that history has been written by the people, by the winners. So there is so much that we don't know, and we were born in this world that it's already given to us. And the truth is that it was all man created. So the possibility is that if we know that it was created by humans, then we could also make it different. So that opens the narratives to new possibilities, like new futures, new ways of thinking, and like trying to put together all identities. Humans, we are a spectrum of diversity, and that's amazing.
Beautifully said here. Thank you so much. Anna, you have more than 10 years, aside of your curatorial practice, you also have more than 10 years of experience with commercial galleries. And of course, I know you're very familiar with the art scene here also, and I would like to know, how have you seen it develop in the last 5 years?
Well, I think it's been quite a dramatic change to open new spaces, small spaces, artist-run spaces, independent spaces. I think it's a very dynamic and thriving community that's being developed, and very plural, no, as well on what topics are being discussed. So for me, I mean, and we saw it, I think last week, we were still recovering from it, but it's been quite dramatic, no? How it's like a boom suddenly. But somehow for me it's not surprising. As I said, I lived in London and I came back 9 years ago. Because I was seeing that there was a lot of room of a lot of possibilities, and that Mexico City was becoming already a magnet for creativity. I mean, we've never had a lack of that, no? I see in our culture, in a way, our modern culture, I wouldn't say ancient culture because I'm not an art historian per se, but we are a country or a city that is creative even if you are not an artist. No, I think things get fixed in many ways or function in almost as accidentally. And I think I go back to the concept of hospitality as a cornerstone, no, for these things that are happening. I mean, the stereotype in a way has been true. As a Mexican woman who studied hospitality management, we identify as warm people, welcoming people, people who enjoy food, drink, having conversation. And I think these are conditions, I mean, beautiful weather, lush, even this city, no, that's kind of like half falling apart in a dry lake, in a seismic zone, completely. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and we had an emergency because it was so polluted we couldn't even go to school, no? And then suddenly you realize that that stereotype that was imposed for us, I think in that way, and circling to patriarchy and capitalism, of what the stereotype of the Mexican was or still is, and then suddenly discovering that, you know, it's not an ideal place. It's there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of corruption, gender specific, and racial disparities. But in those conflicting moments, I think we've come to realize that those are conditions for really good artistic debate and production. So that's how I see it. I don't know how it's going to be next year, but we need to have like 2 weeks of art week, or I don't know, 2 days on the calendar year, because it's been overwhelming in the very good way.
Let's apply the everyone rest as resistance, no?
Yes, exactly.
And thank you for expanding on that. I was wondering, how do you see in terms of the growth and, galleries continuing to pop up and spaces and exchanges and more and more people visiting? What do you think are some of the positives and also some of the negatives? Or the risks
Well,
also you could.
I'm kind of connected and acquainted with a part of the market. I'm sometimes afraid that there's not enough market in Mexico for all of the galleries opening and operating. And the opening of Mariana Ibrahim Gallery or Delhi Gallery, or already the Hakel of these foreign galleries coming to Mexico. I mean, it's exciting, of course, because they're offering a program, and for me, I really do admire and champion the production of exhibitions that are usually accessible. No, I mean, we have to remember that they don't charge us, and we are all welcome to visit them. So this is great. I hope. I don't know if they're doing great business. I hope they are. For me, as a curator also at Salon Acme last week, and the project that I curate, I do open the space for trying to get new projects coming around. This year, I wanted to invite also 2 projects that are coming from the border, from the Mexican-American border, also because I think this is a topic that really needs to be discussed. No? I think, the talk of the town is a little bit like, what's going on with Roma Condesa? There's so many Americans. In a way, I think this is, I hate the word, but it's a xenophobia. Is a little bit like, a little taking pleasure of Mexicans finally getting back their power after being oppressed by the northern neighboring countries, no? But I would really, I really ask people that no, don't do it. Don't be xenophobic. There's no need to, go to that extreme. On the contrary, I think Mexico is, and also an immigrant country, and that we are better together and better mixing. But still, it's a country with a very mixed identity, I'm also, I feel Mexican, but I've always been called güera. And now in the restaurants, they speak to me in English, and these are also, problematics that need to be addressed. And we'll find solutions, no? I think that this week was also there was a lot of pressure because of these visitors, foreign visitors from many countries, but particularly from Northern America, and that there's a cultural shock, that we are not yet prepared, but we have to have very urgently, so we can, just move and collaborate and consume and enjoy art together.
Thank you. I just to add to that with a question. We spoke at the moment about many challenges, about challenges around identity, about body, related to heritage, related to new things from the last years that are developing. And I would like to know, in relationship to any of these issues and themes, and this question is for everyone, what do you think are or could be some of the creative tools that could help push against some of these challenges?
que yo.
Well, creative tools, in my experience, I would say therapy is one of them.
Beautiful.
Going to therapy, I also been trying like alternative therapies, like going with microdosing and going natural, meditate, like try to connect with my own body, and also try to think in pleasure-oriented routines. Like every day, I must have pleasure in the equation, at my day many times. So that's also a practice that I invite everyone to do because explore pleasure is very creative.
I believe these conversations, like conversations that sometimes can feel uncomfortable, or you're just in a vulnerable spot where you're giving a voice and people listen to you and vice versa. So yeah, I believe like we're a mix of different cultures here, so it's beautiful to just be here and been listening and listen to you guys also.
Yeah, I agree. I think the word that comes to mind like discourse. I think allowing discourse to be the tree and the fruits that come from it, being whatever. And let's be honest, I think conversations happen in very specific privileged spaces. Many people aren't able to speak or have opinions or are told that they have the ability to have an opinion because I was one of those individuals. And look, I'm an asshole and I'm going through. And I think making, like, the visibility sounds like an annoying keyword, but like allowing for discourse to happen in the spaces where it needs to happen, and then the rest do their thing, is a way that maybe change happen.
And I'd like to add that I love Maria's answer because I also think that with self-care it's important to be connected to the body, to listen to the body, to ask your body what it needs, to breathe. Sometimes we forget about that, and to watch and to get curious, no? And to really connect with other people and have conversations and ask questions. I think the way that one engages with art or any connection starts with your own body, no? To be really there.
Thank you so much, Anna. Such a huge reminder also after last week, that when everything seems to be moving really fast, it's really easy to neglect that, but it's also the hardest to remember that it's in those moments when we should try a little bit to connect, to that. My last question, within the exhibition Nature Holds a Mirror that we currently have on view at Casa Filipka, Maria is showing a painting. The title of the painting is Regalo, the gift, where two of her characters are engaging in this magical and mystical night during a visitation of a snake. They get visited by the snake, and instead of being the snake of temptation, is the snake of ancestral knowledge that comes to give the two characters a gift. So my question is, what gift do you all think you give to yourselves through your artistic practice, and what gift will you wish to share with others if you have a chance?
The gift of expressing myself, and I believe everyone, like, this idea that people say like I'm not a creative, we're as humans we're all creative, so just having the ability to just express yourself in one way or the other. There's many ways to do it.
I thought the key word is generosity, the gift of generosity. It doesn't mean something like with currency, no, but the generosity again to listen to people and to share your ideas, no? I think and to be a bigger call as a curator to provide those connections to happen in a generous way.
Well, as you said, in my painting, the snake gives to my characters the gift of ancestral knowledge, which is the awareness of the body and the consciousness of pleasure. So that's a gift that I received, and I hope to give that to everyone.
I don't know. I think with my work, I like to give a few words come to mind. Like one is choice, and another is like allowance to make decisions. So I think for me as a practitioner, I'm allowing myself the agency to think I'm smart enough, I'm important enough to say these things and do these things, and I can walk the way that I walk because I deserve it. And then also, I always think of my younger sister when I produce work and who I want to walk away feeling the most from it. And it's because a lot of people, I think they are brought up to survive existence when they should be living existence. And you know, there's many ways to cut and slice that. But you know, just for her to know that, like, you know, you don't need to, I don't know, work a job you hate to pay a bill you hate because you need to wake every morning until you die. Like, you're able to make a mistake here and there and, you know, fuck it up. And that's okay because it always comes back and you can still breathe and live. So I think that's my gift. Just whatever all those things are.
I just want to thank her Clique once again and all of the team. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you, Devin, Maria, Hannah, and Isabella for talking all together here today. I was really excited that we were going to be together. And I just want to take a moment to honor you and honor the work you do and honor your sensitivity, the way you not only reflect upon themes that are very relevant and have been very relevant for a long time, but I'm just very appreciative of the way you, through your vision, offer ways in which we can find alternative ways of engaging with the world and reimagining what it could be. So thank you so much, and I look forward to continue connecting with you and with all of you. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, I just wanted to also step in and say I'm from her clique. Thank you everyone for coming. I think it's okay. Okay. I wanted to thank all of you for participating. This was really fascinating, very truthful, very genuine conversations that you had, and also in the first panel. So thank you for Edith, Amber, for moderating these great conversations. Thank you guys for coming and attending. If any of you haven't had the chance, the show is kind of set up throughout the house, so you can still feel welcome to stay here and hang around. We have a couple of zines and t-shirts for anybody who wants some as a little memento from the event.
We love those.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much. It was really, really great.
Thank you so much.